every Monday evening talking about project management related topics from 7 to 8 on KFNX News Talk Radio 1100. Now, before we were going to the break, I was going to introduce our guest, so let me do it properly. I am very pleased to have Sahar Andrade on the show. She's a well-known social media strategist, speaks 5 languages, a corporate and entrepreneurial executive marketing leader, and she specializes in international marketing campaigns. This is the piece that interests me: strategic communications and leadership in cross-cultural environments. She's lived and is educated on 5 continents and has real-world experience and a straight-talk approach to solving problems. Sahar, how are you doing?
I'm great, Dave. Thank you. How are you tonight?
I'm doing just fine. I got over my tirade over project managers being marginalized, so I got that out of my system. So what I wanted to talk to you tonight about, and thank you so much for taking time.
Absolutely.
Effective communication. What is it?
Effective communication is basically, what is communication? Communication is an exchange either of ideas or opinions, or it's a process, and it's a dynamic process, and it's related between a sender and a receiver. And we know that as project managers and as leaders, we're basically the weatherman. We set the tone for the whole project. So as leaders, we either communicate very well, so our team is successful, or we don't communicate that well. And guess what happens? The project doesn't prosper. So we need...
it's interesting. PMI devotes a whole section, a whole chapter on communication. A lot of it's theoretical, and it's basically how you build communication plans and whatnot. But what they don't really talk about is the real nuts and bolts, down on the street, how you communicate with people.
Absolutely. Communication, miscommunications can cause, first of all, low productivity, low morale, high turnover, no productivity sometimes at all, injury, and sometimes death. Imagine if there is miscommunication in a tower, in a flight control tower, or in an operating room, and we saw it. I mean, there was a few weeks ago at USC, there was a misunderstanding in the operating room where they put the wrong kidney in the wrong patient.
Well, it's interesting because in my lectures, I have that almost identical example where a poor woman went into the hospital to have a tonsillectomy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Little tonsillectomy, a little ice cream, whatever. Due to the communications environment, they amputated one of her feet.
Wow, and there is another person in Tampa, Florida, where he went in to amputate his right leg. When he came out of the operating room, they had amputated his left one. I believe his name is Willens.
The interesting thing is, and when I was doing the research for the lecture, is they attribute in excess of 98,000 deaths every year to this simple topic.
Absolutely.
Something that everybody takes for granted causes the death of almost 100,000 people every year. And it's extraordinary to me that people are so cavalier about communication.
Exactly, and especially in the times that we live in now, where the benefits are really low for employees. So the only thing you can really do is to communicate properly with the employees in your organization, so you can get their buy-in, so they can accept the change, because they will feel valued. They will feel that they have a value in this company or in this organization, and they will give you their best. Of course, communication, like you said, is taken for granted. People think that if I talk to you and I send you a message, it's granted. You should understand what I'm saying. But that's not really necessarily the truth. And believe it or not, it costs the United States every single year billions of dollars in losses just because of miscommunication, just because people don't communicate through the proper channels.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think we could probably balance the budget with proper project management just on the Defense Department.
If they communicate well.
Yeah, I mean, you sit there and look at, you know, airplanes and, well, what is this, $800 toilet seats and all the rest of the crap that goes along with it. Yeah, I'm firmly convinced that proper project management could probably put our feet back on the ground if industry actually started valuing what good project managers actually bring to the table.
Exactly.
Beyond just some silly ass tool set or, you know, buzzword that they're looking for.
Especially if they know how to communicate well with their teams. And you know, and whenever I do a presentation or I give a workshop about communication, I start with the basics. And people miss the basics. The basic is to know what really is a communication process. The communication process starts with a source, who is the sender, that sends a message and encodes it. Encoding it involves a lot of factors that we don't see. And they are the past experience, the history, the beliefs, the values, and how they think about different subjects in life. They encode it, they put it through a channel. That channel can be verbal, face-to-face, can be through an email, through a letter, through a memo, and they transfer it to a receiver. And the receiver decodes the message, again, according to their own beliefs and values, past experience, and then they give a feedback. That's where the miscommunication can happen, with the coding and decoding, because there are barriers and noise can happen in between sending the message and receiving the message. Noise is any barriers that can get in between both. And barriers, we will talk about them tonight because they are the base of miscommunications. They could be physical, as perception, psychological, gender, generational, cultural, race, religion, and all that. And we need to remember that in every gender there are differences, in every culture there are differences. And we will talk tonight about one-on-one what they are. Like for instance, if we start by the physical barriers can be something as simple as a wall in between, or a distance, or even, you know, phone ringings in the background, or someone having a loud music, or even a temperature in the room that could be too high or too low. Believe it or not, that does affect communication.
You know, what's interesting is the fact about, we haven't even talked about email and the curse that it has.
Not yet. Not yet, I'm coming there.
Yeah, I know. We haven't even talked about the curse of email and the curse of texting and everything else. What we're talking about here from a communication standpoint, or at least the majority of the communication standpoint, is verbal
exactly
communication.
And you know what? And even the most verbal is what there are three types of communication, if you want to say the typical ones. They are the verbal, the written, that includes emails, and the most important one is the nonverbal, because your body language can be saying something totally in opposition of what you are verbally saying. Right,
and we're coming up on a hard break, Sahar.
Sure.
But what I'd like to do after we come back from the profit taking is talk about the body language piece, because I don't think a lot of people realize the importance of the body language as part of communication.
Absolutely, I agree.
So I think when we come back from the break, we'll start with that, and then we'll go into miscommunications and
solutions. And solutions, yes.
Yes, and some of the solutions. I'm Dave Campbell, CEO of Campbell Management Consulting, and when we return, we will talk more with Sahar Andrade about communications and its positive and its negative, and hopefully, give you, the listening audience, some tips that will help you enhance your communication. You're tuned into Clarity from Chaos on KFNX News Talk Radio 1100.